So, hello everybody. Welcome to my talk. I have changed the title, but it is still essentially the same content. So yes, today we're going to be talking about Next.JS and Shadcn UI and kind of the future of modern website development. So a bit about me. I'm Jack. I'm a software engineer here at SSW. I ride a motorbike. I have a little CBR 500. It's currently broken. Don't ask when it'll be fixed. Hopefully soon. I do miss it dearly. On this slide, I used to have Xgamer because I've just been coding a lot recently, but the Power World has drawn me in, so I'm not sure if anyone's kind of Pokemon fan or not, but check it out. It's a fun little game. You can follow me on Twitter and GitHub there. If you don't already have the SSW Rewards app, I would very much recommend downloading it, and you can get some really cool rewards. It's on iOS and Android, and you can scan that code if you feel like it. Awesome. So for today, we're going to be talking first up kind of about the JavaScript ecosystem, kind of where it is, where it started to where it is now. We're going to talk about what is Next.js and what is this Shadcn UI thing with a weird name. We're going to talk about setting up a Next.js project. Then we're going to have a little fun, a few demos about building UI components with Shadcn. And then have a little play around with some forms. And then I'll just leave some further resources, and that will be everything. So, the JavaScript ecosystem. Today, well, JavaScript's everywhere, for better or for worse, as my colleagues would say. But me being mainly a front-end developer, it's a very big chunk of what I do. And I'm also working on the TinaCMS team, so even more JavaScript and Next.js experience. But way back before even JavaScript, it was just HTML before my time. And then, it came along with CSS and JavaScript, and there's this jQuery thing, and the internet's built on that. Thankfully, I missed that. Some people love it, who knows? But then came in Facebook, and they're like, hey, here's the thing called React. And it really changed the kind of the game to how we make websites, how we build UIs, this virtual DOM. Everyone's like, whoa, that's so cool. And the community like really supported it. So what does that kind of look like today? Well, we've now got this JSX thing, JavaScript XML. It's just HTML plus JavaScript. I think it looks really good. I think it's very easy to read. Maybe people will disagree with that. But I think it's, for the most part, very, very good. Probably the best way, in my opinion. But front end is hard at the end of the day. There's an ever-growing number of things that we need to learn. And even Lee Robinson himself, the VP of product at Vercel, believes so. So what comes next? Well, frameworks. React by itself is awesome. It's a very powerful thing. It's got this cool virtual DOM. But, how can we take that to production and really let developers have a good UX as well as the consumers? So today we're going to be primarily talking about Next.js. But at SSW, we're an enterprise shop. A lot of our stuff is Angular. I'm not going to talk too much about Angular, but a lot of people either love Angular or they hate it, and they love React or they hate it. So that's kind of the two camps. Then you've got all the Vue, Svelte, Solid, and the millions of others that are created every day. But, is React is it still used? Is it popular? Obviously, I've got a job because of React. Many people do, but, is this Angular thing, we're using it all the time, must be really good, super popular. Well, let's actually have a look at the little weekly downloads, and we can see this massive green line at the top, and that's React. So it's used, it might be a bit small, but it's 24.3 million downloads a week. So there's quite a lot of websites and developers using React. This is from the NPM Trends website. And then that second line, the orange one there, is Next. So, that's at 6.2 million. And for consideration, the blue line, kind of one of the ones down the bottom with 400,000 downloads, still a lot, is Angular. But okay, it's popular. But, is it loved? Well, we can see it looks like it is. If we're going by GitHub stars, and that's the standard, it's got hundreds of thousands of stars. And that means it must be good, right? So we got React 200,000. Whoa. Next 122,000. It's really cool. So we can see, it's popular, it's loved. That's pretty cool. But, where does, if my computer works, where does it actually sit? Is it good? Is it bad? I'm not going to make that decision, but hopefully by the end of this, you'll be able to see, okay, maybe it is kind of cool. And there's a reason why React is awesome. But before you can even really decide about that, let's actually talk about what this Next.js and Shadcn UI thing are. So what is Next.js? Well, it's owned by Vercel. They're a very big company at the moment, kind of shipping all these cool products, all these AI things. I think there was one in the tech news about some AI SDK, revolutionizing how we can chat to AI instead of just text. We get components. How cool. But let's hear it from the actual React devs. Well, they call it the React framework. So you can use React with Vite is the popular one now. It used to be create React app. Now they're saying use Next. It's a very, very solid template to start from. But, what does that actually mean? Well, it comes with some bells and whistles. We have routing. So by default, Next.js, React doesn't really come with a routing solution. You have to bring in React Router is the common one. But next they're like, okay, let's do folder-based routing. And I think it's a very, very good approach to routing. So what does that actually mean? Well, say you go to this website here and you go to /dashboard/settings. Well, that maps exactly to your folder structure. So in this app router, you've got a dashboard, you've got a settings, and then to actually what's shown to the website, you've got these file conventions, and we've got this page. And that's actually what's shown. So that's cool. We've got folder-based routing. Okay, other things can do that. Well, we've also got static and dynamic content loading. So, if you're on an e-commerce website and, you've got all these hot items that you need to load in from some remote API, well, you don't want to wait for everything to be loaded. You can stream them in and still allow the user to be navigating around. Cool. We've also got optimizations. It's kind of trivial, I guess, nowadays. All these frameworks, it's kind of just built in, but still worth mention. We've got JavaScript minification. So obviously sending less JavaScript to the end user means they have a better experience. On these low-end devices, places where internet isn't as good, they're getting a better experience. Also, image optimization. You don't want to be sending a 4K resolution image down to some phone in the middle of nowhere. It's going to take years to load. So Next.js does that for you, just built in, if you use that component. It also has a backend, kind of crazy. Here at SSW, we're a kind of Next.js or .NET kind of powerhouse, very close ties to Microsoft. So a lot of our APIs and backends are in C#, but that doesn't mean you can't leverage Next.js's APIs as well. So what does that actually mean for the deployment story? Well, Vercel's got a very easy deployment route. A guy called Tyler Kapp, who works here, also did another talk on Vercel, and you can deploy a Next site in a matter of minutes, which is really cool. But okay, cool. You kind of went through all that pretty quickly. It's a lot of stuff, right? So let's have a little recap. What is Next.js? Well, it's a full stack framework. It's got this thing called an app router, and it's got an API, so a backend in it. We've got a very powerful folder-based routing system, supports static and dynamic content, and has a lot of built-in optimizations just ready for you. But cool. All right, so we have the framework sorted. We know how we can, ship this HTML out to the user in a pretty good way. But how do we actually build good UIs? Something that, is easy to create, but also giving, well thought out design. Well, we bring in UI libraries. At SSW, time is money. Clients pay a lot of money for us. And we can't just be creating, even though I'm sure some of us want to, Sam at the back, thank you, Sam. The U-Butte, amazing, polished, gold star UI. You just want to use a UI library. The client just wants the thing. You give them the thing in the quickest amount of time. So we're going to be talking about, obviously, Shadcn for this talk, but there's plenty of others, from Material UI and Design, a new one that seems to be pretty popular, Mantine UI, and there's as many as there's probably people in the world coming up. But if I didn't mention your favorite one, I'm sorry. There's a limited list here. So how do we actually see kind of what's popular? We're back to the GitHub stars. So we can see by number of stars is this big yellow line that's been around for quite a long time, over 9 years, and that's Material UI. So people love it. It's a thing by Google. People like Google, that type of aesthetic. It's a very good library, has a lot of components, but it's more of the traditional side where they've got a theme, you can override it, and I mean, they're moving towards this CSS and JS solution. But I would say they're more of the traditional UI. If we have a look at this kind of orange line that's kind of shooting up, well, that's Shadcn. And it's kind of been sweeping through the Twitterverse kind of recently, and people have been really loving it. It's kind of fighting off of the back of Tailwind CSS as being this really, really good way to write CSS. I know, again, hot topic. People hate it or they love it. I'm of the opinion it's awesome, and for working in teams, it saved my life so many times. Not really, but it saved me a lot of hours. But okay, so we can see this cool new thing, but what actually is it? Well, it looks good for starters, but it's not the typical component library. And what I mean by that is it's not exactly an NPM package you can download and bring into your project. It's not like the traditional, but it is beautifully designed components that are just copy and pastable. Yeah. For Shadcn, it has a CLI tool that you can just, essentially it's like installing a package, but just it copies and pastes the code into your project. And these are components that have, everyone, they're very aesthetically pleasing, but they're accessible and responsive and open source. So by default, the community's made 41 of these, just part of the main Shad UI. Gonna minimize the naming of it. Kind of component, not component library. And they're really cool. But again, you don't need all of them. So you only take what you need, and then you can fully customize it with CSS, with Tailwind CSS. And the greatest benefit I found is, well, it's your code now. It's in your project. You can change it. You can modify it. You don't need to go find a CSS class, override that like you would a traditional UI library. So what does this CLI kind of thing look like? It's pretty easy. In this example, we're using npx, so it's not actually downloaded on your computer, but we're just adding a button, and then that button is now living in your project, so you can just import it in like anything else, and then you can just render it out. How cool is that? So much like every other UI library out there, it does have theming and colors, excuse me. And on their website, they have a pretty simple, but highly customizable theming initial choice selector, where you can customize, you can see kind of what all the colors are going to do. And then these just get copied out into CSS variables. So if you're like, normally you're looking through a massive CSS file and maybe there's stuff everywhere. You're looking like, okay, what's the color for this? Well, here it's all in a span of like 50 lines and you can see everything. Your designer's like, thank you. All the colors are here. I can play around with it. But they also do this block thing. I'm going to demo that a bit later. It's pretty cool. And if you guys haven't heard about it, it also has v0 support. So Shad now works at Vercel and he's helped with the v0 project. So we're going to have a look at that later as well, but it's basically a way to kind of get very quick mock-ups from a little generated prompt. So cool, let's have a little recap. So we've got 41 plus components, plus all the many community ones, and we'll have a look at some of those later as well. Full customization, accessibility, responsiveness, just all built in. We got this v0 thing, that's really cool. Tailwind, amazing. React, we love it. So let's actually have a go at kind of setting up a project. So this is more of the kind of beginner stuff, just setting it up, see what it's like. Is it easy? Is it hard? Well, let's have a demo. We're going to create a new Next.js project from scratch. Then we're just going to add in Shadcn UI. And then we're going to add in some themes. And then we'll get back to the presentation. So I just copy and pasted a command in. You can find this command on the nextjs.org website. Just given it a few little details. Just to say we want this to be in TypeScript and to use Tailwind. So it's just saying, what are we going to call it? I'm going to say user group. I don't want it to be source directory. I do want to use the app router, and that is okay as a default. Cool, let's cd in here and let's just run it. But first up, let's actually see what we got. So I'll minimize this and we can see it's an app router by this app folder here. And I keep saying this app router, just to be clear, there is in older versions a pages router. So if you see a pages folder, that means the Next.js project is using the pages routing. There is a slight difference. It's a bit less or more implicit. So if you put any files in a page, they can be accessed from the website, whereas with the app router, there's certain file conventions. So only the page.tsx will be shown to the browser. So we have this global CSS anyway, and we have this layout. So this is one of the app router kind of file conventions. So it has, in this case, it is the root layout. So it is the thing that will encompass the whole app. If you wanted to put a nav bar in here, a footer, this is going to be wrapping around all the sub pages. So the first kind of page that it gives you is, I'm going to say this is generated from v0, is the landing page. So let me do some work to try find my main monitor again. If we can. It's not up. It's not right. Amazing. What we can do is we should be able to click on this. Yay. And you can see this is what's given by default. So it's just a very regular page. It's got some dark mode for the developers, but has some cool links to some of them. But let's actually add Shad UI. So I'm just going to open up another terminal. I think I need to actually go into the directory, and I'm just going to, sorry, keep moving away from the mic. Oops. I'm going to try run this init command. So again, if you go to Shadcn UI, I'm going to say .org, but it might be .com, you'll find the instructions all there, and this command will be there. So we're just going to go through this quickly. We're just doing the defaults. So it's just default, some color choices. We got slate. Do we want to use CSS variables? I think you should. And it will initialize and just create a few files. So let's actually have a look at what's created. Well, we now have this components folder that wasn't here before. We've also got this lib folder, and we've got this utools.ts. So with Shadcn UI, it really uses Tailwind CSS to style everything. And a lot of the common issues with using Tailwind CSS is, sometimes you want to, all your logic is in this JSX file, and you want to be able to set certain styles given on conditions. So what we can do is we can use something called CLSX and then TW merge to kind of safely combine all the Tailwind. If you haven't used something like this before, I highly recommend it if you're using Tailwind. Even if you don't want to use Shadcn, just like take this. Saves. It's awesome. We also have a components.json file now that got created. So this is just for the actual CLI tool that we used. And it just gives a general guide of where everything is in your project. So it's determined, hey, you've got Tailwind. We can find the config here. We've got this cool component file folder. That's where we're going to chuck everything if we use this CLI. And we've got this util. So awesome. I guess I should also mention it has actually updated this global.css file. Let me just save, it's annoying me. Which it gives you kind of a normal, I guess, light theme and a dark theme as well. And all of these colors here, they're just CSS variables. And if we actually have a look in our Tailwind config, this has also been updated. And we can see the colors here are now referenced. It uses HSL. You can change it up. Some people don't like that. You can change it to whatever you want. But main thing is it's using those variables and those colors straight into Tailwind. So, a designer comes in, they're like, cool, what colors do I need to change? Well, you point into a single place, hey, here's everything. And they know this is exactly what's being used. So cool, we've got Shadcn in, and we've got Next. So we can kind of go back up and we can have a look here. And whoa, it's white now. So it's also done a few other things. It's added a background style now in this file. Cool. We're saying, hey, here's the background. But let's go a bit further and we can add in some themes. So Next.js, React, have some, very good community support. So my eyes, here we go. There we go. We're there. It's got some very good support. So someone in the community has made this Next themes. So if you're using theming, if you want the light and dark mode, there's actually a tutorial on Shadcn UI how to do all this. So they point you to here. It's a very good library. We're just going to install it. And all we need to do is create a theme provider. So I'm just going to kind of chuck that in here. We're going to go theme provider.tsx because we're using TypeScript. and let us chuck the theme provider in here. So what is this? What have I just copied and pasted? Well, I won't go into too much detail, but we've just imported a theme provider from this Next themes. We're renaming it because we actually want the export to be theme provider. And then this is just going to wrap around our project, and now we'll be able to change the theme. So, okay, that was a bit too easy. Well, actually, there's a few things we need to do in here. For simplicity's sake, I am just going to copy and paste some code again. And whoa, we've got some changes. So a few things, you'll head over to the Shadcn UI website and you'll follow the installation. It's probably going to be a bit easier without all the technical issues. But you'll see we're now using some of this, like this weird variable. Well, that's to get the correct font. So we want to use inter, but it's just easier to override font sans. Saying that, to actually make that work, well, there is another step we have to do. We need to head back over here and let's actually add the font in. So we need to, again, take in that font from that variable there that we're setting, so this font sans, and we're just going to override it. And then we've also added this at the top. I don't know why it gives us this require, but let's just change it to something a bit more modern and use imports. So awesome. So coming back to here, we can see we're now using this CN utility. We've added some base styles here. And now we're using this theme provider. So if I once again go back over to the website, you see, well, nothing has really changed. It's still white. But let me close this just to prove that it's working, hopefully. We'll change this to doc. And let's try again. Fingers crossed. Hey, we got theming working. So honestly, it's very simple to start a new project with Next with just a few things. You can get theming working just in like that. I'm going to go back to the actual PowerPoint. So I was talking about these things. We've got some file conventions in Next. You know, the more to the right you go, the more maybe advanced some of these things are. I'm just going to say, you know, there's a few things you probably won't really use. If you do, awesome. But they're not generally used that much. But starting off at the core, obviously we have pages. So that's what you're working with, what is actually being sent to the end user on the browser. We've got the layout. So these are just, you know, wrapping everything in your project. So it's, you know, you want to have a nav bar and a footer. And then we've got this route thing. Well, that's for the API. So if you put stuff, or if you put routes under the /API folder, you'll be able to send, or actually be able to call that endpoint as an API endpoint. We've also got, you know, error loading, not found. So these are just things that you can use to, you know, handle those types of things. So if a page or something, an item isn't found, you've now got a fallback. Think of them as kind of error boundaries. We also have this cool thing called middleware. So, you know, if you set up authentication, which is the common case, you can just, you know, stop people from going and hitting the page and then, you know, authenticating. You can move that authenticating logic and blocker into the middleware. Awesome. So we've kind of set up Next.js and Shadcn. We've got some themes. It's looking okay. But let's actually have a play around and see what we can do with components and Shadcn. So we're going to start off with buttons. I know buttons really kind of boring, everywhere boring, but by default you get 6. This is what the default buttons look like. But let's make something cool. So let's have a look and see what we can do. So I'm going to go back over to my project. I'm going to go to this other little terminal here. And normally I would demonstrate actually going over to the website, but I can't actually access my main monitor in front of me. So I do have a backup, thankfully. And we're just going to copy this button. So this is using that CLI. And all we're doing here is we're calling that CLI and we're just adding a button. Simple, right? So it's going to do a little thing and done. So what did that actually do? Well, we can now see, oh, this is great. Something has changed. Well, it's now made a UI folder within buttons and it's actually added a button. You're like, what? That's not normally how UI libraries work. Well, again, you own the code. So, if you wanted to change how this button works, you can do it right here.
Right.
Anything in here you can touch. So, we've got this cool button, but let's actually make it cool. So I'm just gonna, again, got a cool button and we're just gonna paste that in. So what are we doing? Well, this is just a bunch of Tailwind CSS. It is not mine, and I will show you the link to it in a second. But you can see a lot of Tailwind. Some people hate it, but hey, it's all here. No one can mess with it. So, okay, we've added a variant. I will say that this CVA, or Class Variance Authority, is a pretty cool feature. It has some base styles, and then you can set actual properties or variance or size. That can be props on components. So let's actually go to our page, and well, we don't really need any of this anymore. So let us get rid of that. And then we're just going to kind of bring in this button. You see it's at that component UI button. I'm just going to say, yeah, click me. And let's see what this looks like. It should just be the default boring button. It is. Amazing. Just so it's a bit nicer, let's just go back to layout and we'll change it back to light mode. Cool. So as I was saying, we've just added a new variant. So we've gone into this button component and we've added a new variant. So what does that mean? Well, we can now type in variant. It's got type safety, and you can see, oh, there's a cool variant here. So let's see what it does. Let me zoom in a little bit. But now if we hover over this, oh, we get a cool little effect. That's super cool. And that was the cool Shad button. Obviously you can go crazy. You can make this button into whatever you want. Doesn't even have to be a button anymore. But you've got the full control. If you want to see where I got the code for that button, check out that link down there. There are a bunch more cool enhancements on buttons that you can just pull in to your project. Cool. So kind of brushed over it before, but there's this thing called blocks. So blocks are kind of been around for a little bit, but they seem to be coming back again and in Storm. And it's going to be a bit difficult to demo because I don't have access to a browser, but actually I can make do. So let's have a little demo of what blocks can do. So let's go to Shadcn UI. Let's just search for it. And this is the website. But at the top here, there is blocks. So you're like, wow, there's some cool stuff in here. That would take a long time to build. Well, see this little button, we can click that, and you know what? Yeah, this one looks cool. Let's copy that and bring it into our project. So let's just create a file here. We'll call it blockdemo.tsx, and we're just going to paste it in. So we're missing a few things. It uses card and progress, but we can just use the CLI again to bring them in. But we now have something that could have taken, you know, a designer's time, your time, to make a pretty well-rounded card in the matter of seconds, right? Yeah. So just for simplicity's sake and not eating up too much time, I'm just going to comment that out for a second. But blocks really are awesome. And on this website, there's many, many more. There's also other blocks you can get. Definitely check them out. Saves a lot of time. So we've done the demo. V0, another cool thing. It's made again by Vercel, integrates with Shad UI. So let's have a look at that as well. Fortunately, I'm going to have to do this roundabout way to get there, but that is okay. v0.dev. So you come to this, looks a bit plain, but it is essentially what it says it does. I'm not going to do it now because it takes a little bit of time to load up, but essentially you can put whatever prompts you want in, and it will generate 3 kind of sketches that it thinks match your description. And then you can pick one and refine it. So down here, you can also see, well, these are all the people currently using it, and you can see their prompts and what they're getting. And then you can keep on refining and refining and refining. And then you can just copy the code straight into your project, or use their CLI and bring it and install it. So it's a very, very powerful tool to use. So that's kind of just been a quick little demo run through of, how we can customize components. Obviously, there's more and more complex ones, but that's just to get us started. So let's take a look at forms. So forms can be tricky, can be complex. Somehow they always become complex, and everyone has to include one. So Shadcn has a good starting plate. It's still a little complex if you're not familiar with forms and the React Hook Forms library. So the Shadcn UI Forms actually builds on top of the React Hook Forms library, and you get a quite nice trial. So you can see obviously the actual component down there, but let's have a little demo of that one. So what I would normally do is go to that actual website, Shadcn UI, but because my computer is being a bit mean, we are just going to copy the code. Thank God for backups. Cool. So let's actually create this form component. And we will just copy the code in here. So what do we get off the bat? Well, once I actually install all of these things, we can see it's installed Zod for us. So if anyone's familiar with Zod, it's just another type safety layer, does some runtime checks, and it's becoming very, very popular. It also uses a very popular hook building or form building library called React Hook Form. Super recommend it. Definitely very easy to get into, and the docs are really well documented. So obviously we're bringing in this Zod thing. We have another Shadcn form, and then here is our first kind of use of Zod. And all we're using here is we're saying, okay, cool, we have a form, and we want our form to only have a username, and we want that username to have a minimum of 2 characters. And if we don't have that, well, we're going to show a message. So that's cool. And then we define the form here. And this is kind of where it gets a little messy. Some might say this is pretty good, but I think we can do a bit better. So, we have this form field, and then, this form item, and we got a label that we need to give it. And then we have this control. Okay, well, we want to use something external. We have our own thing, so we use the Shadcn input here. Then we got a description, and then we have the submit button. So it's still quite a lot, but it does give you a good starting place. So I'm actually going to install. Hopefully I have the command. We don't, but oops. Let us just add in the button and change this to form. And that's just going to install all those packages that we need. So that was done, nice and simple. Again, we now have a form component in here. It's installed some libraries for us, but it's a bit crazy in here. But again, there's something you own, you can change, you can play around with. If it's something you don't like, it's fully customizable. So let's actually see what it looks like. We can go back to our page. I'm just going to go Command P and just go page. And we're just going to add it in here. I think I've called it form demo. And let's see what that looks like. Hopefully we've done everything correctly. We haven't. That's okay. But again, we can go back to here. We can go back a slide, and this is what we would end up with. So, a bit of code. This is what it ends up with. We're going to have to go back a little bit. But cool. So we've kind of had a look at that. We've got a form. And now we can have a look at something a bit simpler. So someone in the community has made more of a form builder. So, you don't want to have to write out all these masses of form controls and form fields and form labels and all this nested stuff. Well, this is the solution to that. Let's have a quick look. Obviously, we got some errors, so we're just going to avoid that one. But again, I am just going to copy and paste some code down into here. Obviously, that is not working. Sad. And we'll call it auto form demo. And we can kind of just go through this code. So already you'll see, again, it is using this Zod typing library to actually format the structure of the form itself. So we can get that type safety and validation checking. And then you can see, well, instead of, using this form, we've brought in, behind the scenes, I haven't actually brought it in yet, but this auto form component. And essentially it is just a form builder that uses Shadcn components as its kind of core. And it will just build from this form schema. So it knows, hey, I want a username. It should be a string. It is required because it's minimum of 2 fields, and it should have this error message. And then we can come in here and we can give it a bit more details. description, some placeholders. But by default, this will actually use the native browser validation. So you'd be like, if I was able to run this, you would be like, whoa, okay, it's not actually showing the validation I want to see. How can we change that? Well, again, you own the code. So you'd be able to go to this auto form button. I mean, it hasn't been brought in currently, but we can have a look here. And we'll be like, okay, cool. So we've got this submit button here, and let's actually modify this to not use, maybe not all the time, so let's just add it as a prop, but we don't want it to use form validation. So by default, it's coming in here. We can just make it a form validation. Look at that. Thank you, Copilot. And we can add it in here. Oops, not there. Here. Awesome. We can add it in here, and it'll be like something like this. Okay. So now we've kind of customized the component to suit our needs, because, well, we own the code. It's not like going into a known module, try to edit that. No, it's in your project. You own the code. It's staying. So now if we did go back over here and this wasn't working, we would be able to go down here and there would be this prop that shows up that we just added. So just a bit more of a demo about, how you can use some of the community built tools that the React community actually provides and build to save us a bunch of time. So going back here, little recap. It didn't turn out exactly how I wanted it to, but forms are hard even without all the technical difficulties. So if you are doing something more complex, definitely use some form library that you've used before. If you're unfamiliar, React Hook Form is great. I've also used Formic in the past. I now mainly just use React Hook Form. It's got all the bells and whistles that you need. Wizard support, everything you need. So, Shad UI has a very good starting place. So for simple forms, and then for a form builder that the community's made, it's very powerful. You can use that. But again, simple forms, if you need something more complex, well, you're probably going to have to build it. So we're coming to the end on this one. So I am just going to leave you with some kind of further resources to go forward. And kind of just got them here. This PowerPoint will be online, so you'll be able to look at them a bit, actually go to them. But, just some of the docs, some of the things we've had a look at. Next.js have a really good learning place if you're new. SSW, we also have a bunch of rules on the best practices, so you can head there. And then my personal favorite is this awesome Shadcn UI library or repo. And this has hundreds of community built packages in here and definitely worth exploring. So kind of today we've gone over the ecosystem, we've gone over what Next.js is, what Shadcn UI is. We've set up a project, it's pretty quick, very easy to use. We've customized a bit of the components, seen, okay, well, they live in our project, awesome. And we've played around with some forms, had a bunch of technical difficulties, and we're at the end. So this is where you can find the presentation on GitHub. If you've got any feedback today, that would be very, very welcome. You can scan this to give feedback, which would be awesome. You can also earn 500 SSW reward points for this one. So very cool. Leave it up for another few seconds. Awesome. And thank you very much.
Hi everyone, I'm Nick. And first of all, just wanted to say thank you for a very entertaining presentation.
It was, with all the technical difficulties.
Ladies and gentlemen, are there any questions from the audience?
How have you found using auto? I've not heard that before. Like, have you used it in Anger? Like,
Well,
Just repeat the question first.
yes. Someone from the audience is asking, how do I find autoform? Have I used it? And I honestly find it very, very good. For something, if I'm running up like a small little booking section or something, which is normally just very simple, enter your name, whatever. It's perfect. Honestly, it's super easy. You just write a little schema, the validation works, and it's done. With everything going to more React server component land, kind of the forms are changing. They want us to use actions now, so it might change again. But I think for now, this is, autoform is really good. If you want to check it out, definitely recommend.
Right, another question?
I was just worried about the components and how you go in the local and you modify them. That's all cool for customization. But when they get upgraded, you want to get the new component. All of a sudden, you've got all this code that's been changed with a new one. And I'm just curious on how that's going to happen. Like, we get new components coming into upgraded ones.
Yeah, for sure. Yes, to repeat the question, sorry for the people online. Question was, when when a new component comes in, maybe it gets updated, what happens to the one that you've brought in locally? So in that regards, maybe you haven't customized it a lot and it's just an easy, you can copy and paste the new one in. If you have customized it a lot, you've got the source code of both. Depending on, what type of component it is, maybe the changes aren't that drastic and you can just take bits that you want. But for the main core logic of it, there hasn't been any breaking changes that I've experienced. Maybe some slight tailwind classes that have changed, but again, you can just copy those in if you need.
No, next question?
Just another question was around usage of the source directory or not. I noticed that you did it. And I was just wondering about the controversy around that, because I think having a source directory centralizes your app, but I was just interested in your thoughts.
Yeah, so to repeat the question, we got it. It's about the controversy of should we use the source directory or not. Personally, for me, I'm finding not using it a bit nicer in just how I'm using it in my day-to-day. But honestly, it depends on the team. Some people like it, some people don't. It's your preference at the end of the day. It's just another folder to go into. Don't have any real special takes on it. Cool.
Right. Question from online. What's your favorite way of deploying a Next.js website?
Yeah, so obviously the easiest choice is Vercel. Again, Tyler Kappa has a very good talk about getting set up with Vercel and deploying the many different templates you got on there, or any other stuff. It's just point it to your GitHub repo, and wow, there it is. You can add in previews as well, comments. But with anything Next and React Relay, there's also a lot of controversy. So Vercel does have a lot of controversy at the moment. A lot of people are now like, you should self-host everything and save you a bunch of money. So if you do want to go with that option, obviously maybe a little Microsoft sellout, but Azure is just another good place to host these types of things.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your attendance tonight. It's been a pleasure. On behalf of Jack Pettit and Nick Aaron, signing off for SSW.
See ya.